The first pale stripe of morning slid across my Charleston kitchen while I folded the last of Peter's shirts, the stubborn stack I'd dodged for 3 months after the funeral. My hands moved on autopilot, pressing creases into the soft blue cotton that still held a faint ghost of his aftershave. The scent rose and vanished like a shy visitor. At 66, I was finally learning what quiet really sounds like. It isn't absence, it's presence, with edges. The hum of the refrigerator, a gull's distant heckle, the grandfather clock testing the air with measured ticks, as if it were mapping a room it no longer trusted. Don't forget to subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. Without Peter's dawn routine, the house had the acoustics of a cathedral. No paper rustle, no off-key humming from the back hall, no forehead kiss that smelled of toothpaste and coffee, before he disappeared into the garage to tinker with whatever needed not actually tinkering. Only the clock, the sigh of settling wood, and the faint clink of ceramic as I set one shirt atop another in the donation box. This is progress, Dr. Patel had said last week, crossing an ankle over her knee. She'd changed her hair, shorter, springy, and I had wanted to tell her it made her look like the kind of person who gets invited to rooftop parties and actually goes. Grief is not a straight line, Marina. Some mornings you float, others you swallow water. Both are normal. I'd nodded at her diplomas and at the small plant on the windowsill that was somehow always alive. I told her about how the dishwasher sounded angry lately, and how I avoided the right side of the bed without meaning to. I'd not told her about the email, because saying it out loud would drag it from possibility into choice, and choice is a door that sometimes clicks shut behind you. Now I slid a thumb along the last collar, an old habit. Peter had liked his buttons lined like soldiers. The shirt was sun-bleached at the shoulders, threadbare where love insists on contact. I put it into the box and exhaled, lightheaded as if I'd stood up too fast. The doorbell sang 2 quick notes. Through the peephole, I saw my younger son, Mark, on the porch. He rocked from heel to toe in tiny arcs, the way he had before every childhood spelling bee, a good luck tremor he'd never fully outgrown. Behind him, a car idled. Alyssa sat in the passenger seat with Olivia, 3 months of cheeks and eyelashes, bouncing on her lap. Both faces looked pinched with the kind of fear you rehearse. Will this work? Mom, we need to talk, he said when I opened the door. No hello, no how are you? His hair had lost a fight with sleep. The crisp shirt he favors had resigned itself to wrinkling. Coffee, I said. I could make coffee in a hurricane. His loafers ticked across the oak floors Peter and I had refinished our 2nd year of marriage. We had turned that project into a weekend-long argument about satin versus semi-gloss that ended with pizza on the kitchen floor and the particular laughter that arrives right after an apology. The finish we chose still throws a polite shimmer when morning hits it just right. I measured grounds by muscle memory. Tap, level, slide. The machine's first burble put a fence around the air. Mom, Mark began, tugging out a chair, Peter's chair, and dropping into it, leg bouncing. Alyssa and I were worried about you here by yourself, about this big place, about Dad's things, about the inertia. I kept my back to him and watched the carafe darken. You're strong, he said, voice shifting into his client-calming cadence. But this house and the memories, it's a lot. You need purpose again. The word purpose landed with the weight of a family Bible. I poured 2 mugs, tipped cream into his the way I had the day he turned 12, and declared he was old enough for grown-up coffee, then made a face and drowned it in sugar. What are you proposing? I asked, though his posture had already told me. He exhaled. We need help with Olivia, he said. Alyssa's drowning, pumping, no sleep, Back to the magazine next month. My travel's ramping up. You're a natural with babies. When you hold Liv, she melts. You'd have a reason to get up in the morning again. We could sell this place, get you a smaller condo near us. Fresh start. The coffee turned mean in my mouth. Sell the house where we brought both boys home wrapped like secrets. Where Tuesday meatloaf learned to be celebratory. Where Peter died, yes, but more importantly, where he lived. I haven't decided anything about the house, I said. Be realistic, Mom. The roof's tired. The furnace is prehistoric. Taxes keep climbing. Dad isn't here to fix everything. Let us help you downsize to something manageable. Manageable did not bruise until the second step. Manageable meant a life sized for someone else's convenience. He covered my hand. His wedding band flashed, the same plain gold as Peter's, now exiled to my jewelry box because glinting objects can be merciless. We take care of each other, Hen, he said gently. Also, we can't afford full-time childcare. There it was, honest enough to be respectable. Livy's warm weight did offer something I hadn't found elsewhere, a kind of truce with the clock. But behind Mark's earnestness, something older uncurled, stretching like a cat in a warm stripe of sun, the woman I'd been before grief blunted me. Marina Caldwell, who built an international consulting career in cross-cultural negotiation, who spoke 3 languages, who hammered out contracts in rooms where everyone pretended they were not afraid. 2 days earlier, an email had arrived. I'd read it once in the kitchen, twice in the hall, and a third time in the half-light of Peter's study, so the words would know I was serious. Give me a little time, I said. What's to think about? Mark asked. This is perfect. Perfect for whom? I squeezed his fingers and gave him a smile I had created in 1989 for little boy Mark when he wanted a third bowl of cereal. By the weekend, I promised. He left with relief, performing his confidence. From the window, I watched him gesture in the car, the way people do when they are translating another person's choice into their own story. Peter's study still smelled faintly of sawdust and printer ink. I opened the laptop. The email waited, red-flagged and patient. Mrs. Caldwell, we were sorry to learn of your husband's passing. Peter spoke often of your work with pride. We are seeking a senior mediator in Tokyo for an initial 6-month engagement in cross-cultural business integration. Compensation is excellent. Visa and housing provided. Your profile is an exact fit. Skills don't evaporate. They go dormant like seeds in an envelope. My phone chimed. Thanks for hearing me out. Dad would want us to take care of you. I deleted the text and called Nora Kim, who had sat on a milk crate beside me 20 years ago, as we named a company on a napkin. Nora, it's Marina. About Tokyo. An hour later, the decision had a shape. Start next month. Apartment in Shinjuku. Car when needed. A local team. We'll make it easy, Nora said, which meant hard parts would be efficient. I closed the laptop. Peter's chair held a triangle of light. For the first time since the funeral, a future did not feel like treason. The phone rang. Mom, Mark said, voice bright. Alyssa's mom is coming Sunday. Come for dinner. It'll be good for you. Alyssa's making her famous lasagna. Lovely, I said, and practiced a smile against the blank wall. The way you test a dress in a mirror to see if it belongs to you. Sunday arrived in gilt-edged air, the sort of October Peter would step into and declare, "We're buying apples and we're buying too many." I buttoned a burgundy blouse he had insisted I needed because life requires color even when you don't. In the mirror, I looked like a translation of myself, accurate enough to understand. Their cul-de-sac wore success like a fragrance. The lawn had the geometry of a well-kept secret. The hedges were so tidy they felt theoretical. The house itself had the glossy confidence of a magazine ad. Peter and I had helped with the down payment 3 years ago, a gesture of love that shaved a decade off our retirement fantasies, and which, at the time, felt like a story we would be proud to repeat. A silver Lexus shone in the driveway. Through the window, I saw Alyssa's mother, Vivian Pierce, mid-monologue, describing something large with her hands, a wave, a yacht, an ego. Alyssa opened the door with Olivia on her hip. Mascara shadows tethered her eyes. "Thank God," she said. "She hasn't stopped fussing." Olivia arrived on my shoulder like a prayer and softened against my collarbone. Her fist found my necklace chain and made a small proprietary fist. "She adores her grandmother," Vivian trilled, stepping into the arch like a stage entrance. At 68, she was smooth, where time usually writes in italics. Her hair was exactly the color hair intends in advertisements. Her nails were a glossy thesis on leisure. "You look tired, Alyssa dear," she said. "When Richard and I had the twins, we hired a nanny day one. A woman can't do it all. It's not weakness to delegate. It's strategy." Mark appeared with a dish towel over his shoulder like a prop. "That's actually what we wanted to talk about," he said, and aimed me toward the living room. "Mom, sit with Vivian while we plate." The room was white and gray with aspirational plants and curated pops of color. The furniture had opinions about posture. Vivian settled into the sofa and arranged her handbag on the cushion beside her, as if it required a view. "I was devastated about Peter," she began. "We had done this scene at the funeral, but grief has reruns. Such a shock, though at our age we anticipate these things. At our age, she was 6 years ahead of me, but had the generosity to include me in her demographic. It must be difficult on your own," she continued. "The house, the finances, all those things Peter used to handle. Richard says women our age weren't trained for such complexities. We're better with nurturing." I thought of spreadsheets that had scared CEOs into different decisions, of the 3 languages sitting patiently in my mouth, of how Peter always deferred to my math because my math had teeth. From the kitchen, voices with edges, words rose and fell, perfect solution, natural instincts, consistent care, like the chorus of a song designed to get stuck in your head. Dinner arrived on wedding china with a vase of lilies so fragrant they threatened to become a plot point. Mark uncorked a Barolo with more ceremony than the wine required. "To family," he said, "to being there." The lasagna was unfairly good. I was hungry in a way that felt treacherous and human. Vivian described an upcoming trip to Italy in detail that would have made a travel agent blush. Mark offered bullet points about a project that involved cables and stress tests, and a client who liked to say synergy without irony. Alyssa spoke about the magazine's redesign and how budgets now had personality disorders. "And here we are," Alyssa said finally, tone bright with practiced spontaneity. "The childcare situation. Daycare is astonishing, and we're not thrilled about strangers with her this young. Children need stability," Vivian offered, folding the napkin in her lap into what looked like origami judgment, "and love, best delivered by family." "Mom," Mark said, pivoting to me with the smile he uses on difficult clients who are not wrong but must be moved. "We were thinking about what we discussed, helping with leave. We found some lovely senior communities near us, activities, a shuttle. The market's hot. You'd do well selling your place. And the best part? You'd have structure and purpose again." Senior communities, shuttles. I was 66, not a fragile artifact in need of platform signage. Olivia reached, a small opening and closing of the hand, the universal gesture for please. I lifted her. She sighed into me, liquid and absolute in her trust. "See?" Vivian said, delighted. "Some people are simply meant to mother. Meant to, as if biology wrote job descriptions." "We did some math," Alyssa added briskly. "Between your equity and Mark's raise, they've planned my future," I thought. Not just this conversation. A calendar, a move, a set of tasks, a life shaped like a solution. "It's obvious you've thought this through," I said, and the room brightened with relief. "We want what's best, especially for you," Mark said softly. "Dad would want us to take care of you. There is no heavier furniture in a conversation than the chair you reserve for the dead. Everyone sits up straighter." I stood, still holding Olivia, and went to the glass doors. The backyard was immaculate, magazine-styled, a diagram of prosperity. Not a single tree Peter would have loved for being messy. "Mom," Mark said carefully. "I need to tell you something," I said, turning with the baby's weight and anchor and a wing. "I've been offered a 6-month consulting post in Tokyo. I'd leave next month." Silence lengthened until it learned to walk. Vivian's fork froze mid-air. Alyssa's eyes widened, then narrowed, then widened again. Mark's face shuffled through emotions like cue cards. "Tokyo," he repeated, checking the word for defects. "Mom, you're grieving. A new city, new job. At your age?" He offered the phrase like a locked door. "It isn't reasonable." "I haven't accepted yet," I said, the last true sentence available to me that let him keep breathing. "Nora expects my answer tomorrow." Alyssa's laugh was a small glass breaking. "You won't accept," she said. "We need you here. Olivia needs you." Need, not want. Want has manners. Need has elbows. "I should go," I said, handing back the baby. The protests rose from the table like startled birds. Dessert sat lonely and perfect on the counter as I thanked them and stepped into air that had decided to be crisp. Back home, I made tea in Peter's favorite mug, the one with a chip that imitates a smile, and considered the difference between love and obligation. Then I wrote Nora. "Nora, thank you for your patience. I'm delighted to accept Tokyo. When do I start?" Her reply arrived before the kettle cooled. 10 days. Shinjuku apartment. We'll handle everything. 10 days. Mark texted, "Mom, let's talk. We can work this out." I let the words sit unread like a plant I refused to water and called my older son, Sam, in Seattle. "Tokyo?" he said, and I could hear the grin crawl into his voice. "How do you feel?" "Terrified," I said, "and more alive than I've felt since. Then go," he said simply. "Live the life you want, not the one Mark wants for you." After we hung up, I slept as if someone had replaced my bones with warm sand. The next days clicked forward like a well-behaved metronome, which should have warned me. Mark's voicemails multiplied. Reason, worry, then urgency wearing a thin coat of patience. On Thursday, I picked up. "This has gone too far," he said without hello. "Sunday? That's impossible." "I leave Sunday," I said. "I'm not selling the house." "You can't maintain it from Japan." "It's been paid off for 12 years," I said, "and I've engaged a property manager." Silence from his end turned the room into a cathedral again. I could hear the recalculation, the columns of his mind tabulating, deleting, trying again. "We're coming over," he said finally. "We should do this face to face." They arrived with a crying baby and a diaper bag large enough to qualify as ambition. I offered to take Olivia. Alyssa clutched her tighter, which is one definition of love and another of fear. "Maybe there's a middle ground," Mark said, leaning forward as if the angle of his body could move me. "Part-time nanny. You help when you want. Quality grandmother time." As if love required an appointment app. That's thoughtful, I said. I've already accepted Tokyo. Then unaccept, he said too fast, and flinched at his own tone. Olivia's cries hit a higher key. Alyssa stood and walked small loops like a planet caught in a temporary orbit. You're 66, Mark said, softer but with the stubbornness 6-year-old Mark used on broccoli. Full-time international work is a young person's game. Age as evidence. Beneath it, something rawer. What aren't you telling me? I asked. He looked at Alyssa. She stopped pacing, which made the room notice her silence. Tell her, she said. The promotion came with adjustments, he said. Company restructured. My salary is down 30%. Understanding flowed through me so quietly, it felt like a betrayal of drama. Of course, the urgency, the choreographed dinner, the flawless plan scheduled around my resources. You need childcare you can't pay for, I said, and you need me to sell my house to ease your mortgage. It's more complicated, Alyssa said quickly, because complicated feels better than honest. We want Liv to have a strong bond with you, but yes, money is tight. The mortgage is $4,800. We're short about $2,000 a month. $2,000 a month. 24 a year. A budget hole large enough to swallow a person. When did you know? I asked. Right after Dad's funeral, he said, eyes dropping. While I was learning how to walk through rooms without holding my breath, they were calculating my liquidity. Not coincidental, strategic. I'm sorry, I said, and meant it in one direction but not the other. I won't be your plan. I'm not selling. I'm not becoming unpaid staff. I'm not patching a budget built on a dare. Family helps family, Mark said, voice gone sandpaper. Both ways, I said. When did you last ask what I want? He had the grace to be quiet. The next morning, the doorbell rang as if it had urgent news. Vivian stood on the porch with a tall woman in a severe navy suit whose confidence was its own jewelry. Marina, dear, Vivian chirped, glancing past me into the hall as if a camera crew might appear. This is Dr. Penelope Strauss, a geriatric psychiatrist. We're very concerned. The storm door stayed between us. I'm not inviting you in, I said, calm the way glaciers are calm. And you can stop talking now. It's not an intervention, Vivian said quickly. A wellness check. Mark says you've been isolated and impulsive. This whole Tokyo fantasy. Fantasy? I asked. A signed offer from a global firm? Dr. Strauss raised a tablet as if it could issue absolution. Grief can manifest as grandiosity and poor judgment, she recited. Sometimes we see prodromal cognitive decline. You're diagnosing me through glass, I said. How efficient. I'm offering support, she replied, which sounded like the name of a billing code. You're offering paperwork, I said, to justify control. They retreated, Vivian's shoes clicking embarrassed little Morse code on my steps. As the Lexus disappeared, rage returned to my body like heat after a cold swim. I called Harold Bennett, our attorney for 2 decades. He answers his phone like a person, which is rarer than it should be. Harold, I said, I need to update my power of attorney today, and I need protections against any attempt to shoehorn me into an involuntary psychiatric evaluation. No one can force that without a court order and evidence of imminent danger, he said, voice steady as an old tree. A job in Tokyo doesn't qualify. Whom do you want as your agent? Judge Ruth Delgado, I said. Our neighbor, retired federal judge, spine like steel rebar. She knows me as me. Excellent choice, he said. We'll add explicit language. No family decision-making without your consent, and that international travel or career shifts aren't grounds for competency challenges. After a week of being treated like a breakable package, competence stamped itself on my forehead in wet ink. I walked around the house and said out loud to empty rooms, I am fine. The rooms believed me. Saturday morning delivered the family finale. Mark arrived with Alyssa and Olivia, the diaper bag now an ecosystem. And to my surprise, Sam, road-weary from the night drive from Seattle. He hugged me too hard. Some gestures are apologies without words. "What is happening?" he asked, turning on Mark. "You called at midnight and said there was an emergency." We collected ourselves in the living room, where the photos on the mantel did their silent, relentless work. There was Peter at 25, grinning with a model airplane he never finished. The boys in matching sweaters I regret and adore. A series of vacations in which our smiles are larger than our budget. "Sam," I said, "your brother left out the part where he needs me to sell my house and provide free childcare to maintain a life he cannot currently afford." Sam's expression moved from confusion to comprehension to something that, on Mark, would be anger, but in Sam arrived as gravity. "You dragged me here because Mom refused to be your ATM?" "It's not that simple," Mark said. "She's isolated. Tokyo is in her field," Sam said. "She's not fragile. She's qualified." "If she leaves, we could lose everything," Alyssa whispered, and the room did the courtesy of believing that was true for a heartbeat. "Then sell the house you can't pay for," Sam said. "Downsize. It's called math. People do it every day." "It's different here than in Seattle," Mark snapped. "I bought what I could afford," Sam said. "I know it's a radical model." "Enough," I said. The room obeyed. I stood and put my hand on a frame of Peter and me on our wedding day. The picture had never quite been straight. I left it tilted on purpose now. The flaw felt like honesty. "Your father and I spent 38 years building this life," I said. "We sacrificed. We planned. We helped with college, with weddings, with down payments. We did it out of love and because we believed in you. We also expected you to become adults." Mark opened his mouth. I raised a hand. "Since Peter died," I continued, "not once have you asked what I need. You've asked what I can do for you. You brought a psychiatrist to my porch to label me incompetent because I said no. You have confused access with love." Alyssa cried quietly, which might have been guilt or exhaustion or both. Olivia studied our faces with solemn baby anthropology. "We're desperate," Alyssa said. "We don't know what else to do." "Then you will learn," I said, not unkindly. "Sell, cut, take second jobs, call the bank before the bank calls you. Millions of people have walked this path without using their mothers as bridges." "Dad would be ashamed," Mark said, his voice small enough to trip over. "Your father would be proud of me," I said gently, "and of you, when you do the hard thing." I turned to both of my sons. "I leave for Tokyo in the morning. 6 months, maybe longer. When I return, if I return, the terms change. I won't be summoned as a convenient grandmother or emergency bank. I'm Marina Caldwell. Learn the name." After they left, Mark flinching at the weight of doors and Sam squeezing my shoulder like a semaphore, the house exhaled. It had been holding its breath. That night I sat in Peter's chair and walked the rooms with my eyes, saying goodbye to corners and thresholds the way you learn to honor small exits. I packed until the suitcase zipper made the little sound that means enough, and then I unpacked one sweater and put it back on the shelf, because you should never leave a house looking like you emptied it of yourself. Sunday's sky over Charleston was the color of clean paper. At the airport, the woman at the counter had eyes that told me she knew how to knit. "Business or pleasure?" she asked, because scripts require maintenance. "Work," I said, "and life." "Those overlap," she said, and handed me a boarding pass that looked suspiciously like permission. At security, I stood in a stocking-foot line of people inventing reasons to be in a hurry. I placed my shoes and belt and watch and a pen Peter loved into a gray bin and felt momentarily unmade. The TSA agent said my name like a question and then like an answer. At gate A12, a toddler herded two weary parents with the intensity of a sheepdog. A man in a suit argued with someone via earbuds while nodding amicably at no one. A college student slept with her backpack curled like a comma around her chest. Life in transit is still life. I texted Nora, boarding, see you on the other side. I texted Sam a picture of the plane's window. I did not text Mark. On the long flight, I learned anew that time is a suggestion. The woman next to me slept with the monastic steadiness of someone who charges phones before 20%. When she woke, we traded tiny histories the way strangers do, at altitude, curated, suggestive. She was flying home to see a mother who grew bonsai and had opinions about poets. I told her about my work in a cautious past tense, as if my future would be offended by the assumption. Over Alaska, the pilot said a thing pilots always say about turbulence and seatbelts and how we'll do our best to find you a smooth patch, and I considered knitting needles and signed offers and the exact dimensions of courage. We landed in a morning that belonged to a different clock. At Narita, a young man in a dark suit held a small sign with my name written in careful strokes, like a promise not to misspell me. "Caldwell's son," he said, bowing. "Welcome." A black van slid from airport to city like a punctuation mark changing its mind. Outside, everything moved with embroidered precision. Cyclists, taxis, pedestrians with umbrellas already open against sunlight. Vending machines appeared at polite intervals like trustworthy friends. Every corner held a shrine to convenience. The Shinjuku apartment was compact, gleaming, angled to steal a sliver of skyline. The building manager, a woman with iron-gray hair and an expression that discouraged foolishness, handed me a packet labeled in both languages: trash, internet, laundry, disaster instructions, a map with a star for the nearest konbini. "You are far from home?" she asked in English, careful as origami. "Far," I said, "and also not." She nodded as if I had passed a small test. "Then you will be fine." I bought slippers at the corner store and a kettle shaped like a drop of rain. I misread my first train map and arrived at my destination only because Tokyo tends to reward good intentions with second chances. I learned the sound the crosswalk makes when it tells you to go is different from the one it makes when it tells you to wait, and that mercy can be encoded into infrastructure. The firm's Tokyo office lived on the 23rd floor of a building that had decided morning light was a performance. The receptionist bowed and said my name as if it mattered. Nora had already briefed them. I had authority, and they were to treat me like someone with a past and a future instead of only one or the other. The project, a German pharmaceutical giant acquiring a majority stake in a nimble Japanese biotech, both claimed innovation. Both had lawyers who quoted schedules with the fervor of prophets and translators who looked as if they wanted to lie down. We began with tea and respect. Titles matter here. So does the order in which you hand someone your card. The German delegation arrived with confidence arranged on their faces like expensive eyewear. The Japanese team wore competence like a second skin. "Your integration timeline is aggressive," I said to the Germans, because the adjective they wanted me to use was ambitious. Aggression and ambition are cousins. Only one gets invited to this house. They laughed, which I had planned, and then stopped, which I had planned more. I sat across from Sato-san, the Japanese head of R&D, who had built a lab culture that treated failure as data and data as story. He had also, it turned out, written papers on ethics that had been assigned in graduate seminars elsewhere, which is the particular kind of authority you should not ignore. The Germans brought Dr. Keller, an operations genius with the listening face of a diplomat and the patience of a chess player who knows the game will go long. We mapped timelines, yes, but also vocabularies. When you say risk, I asked one group, what do you picture? When you say soon, I asked the other, whose calendar does it live on? We created a glossary no one would print, because glossy brochures have a way of appearing in courtrooms. We agreed that no surprises meant briefings would occur before decisions, not after. We rehearsed what would happen when a German engineer criticized a Japanese colleague directly in a meeting, a thing likely to happen not because Germans are rude, but because Germans believe clarity is mercy. We taught that mercy is bigger. On day 4, a junior scientist asked a question and then apologized for asking. I stopped the meeting and said, "Curiosity is a compliment." The translation took a long time. The smile afterward did not. On day 6, someone finally said out loud what the room had been whispering. We are afraid of losing who we are. I wrote it on the whiteboard because the board doesn't forget. We set up a no-ego lab day, which is a misnomer. Egos fall through doors like teenagers. But we called it that anyway. The Germans brought precision. The Japanese team brought elegance. We ate lunch standing up, and for a moment the room was not 2 companies. By the end of week 2, the project had rhythm. Not fast, not slow. True. The Germans learned to schedule silence. The Japanese learned that asking for clarification does not diminish face. It polishes it. At night, I learned my neighborhood by smell. Noodles, rain, a bakery that believed in butter. I learned exactly which vending machine had the canned coffee that tasted like stubbornness, and which one had the kind that tasted like home. Kenji Watanabe found me at a gallery opening because both of us were early. He was an architect with a quiet laugh and a habit of looking up when he walked, as if buildings deserve eye contact. "You are new to the city," he said, "which is something the city tells on you." "I am," I said, "and not new to being new." He showed me a pocket park I would have missed, and the bakery around the corner that takes exactly 7 minutes to sell out of custard buns. He pointed to a temple wedged between a karaoke bar and a convenience store and said, "Tokyo edits in layers." Ana Morales ran a small gallery that smelled like paint and patience. She put a travel set of watercolors in my hand and said, "You know how to mix colors because you know how to mix people." The first time I tried to paint, my hand forgot and then remembered like a leg waking up. The page did nothing and then forgave me. Professor Hiroshi Sato taught international relations at a university that sits like a grandfather on a hill. He had been widowed 5 years, soft-spoken, eyes like a good editor. We met at a lecture about economies and stayed talking about the grammar of grief, how some languages contain a future perfect for things that will have been okay. We began to eat dinner together once a week, a ritual that grew without being named. We kept it careful. Older hearts are not fragile exactly, but they're aware of their own mathematics. The city began to hold me. The key turned more easily. The kettle learned what time I'd ask for water, and the window learned my gaze. 6 months in, the phone lit like an emergency lamp. 17 missed calls from Mark, 12 from Alyssa, 3 from Sam, which worried me more because he doesn't overdial. I called Sam first. "Mom," he said, and his relief was the kind you can pour into a glass. Mark and Alyssa lost the house. Foreclosure. They're at Vivian's. It's tense. Olivia's been sick. Mark's calling anyone who ever liked a photo of his on social media for money. He asked me for 50 grand. "What did you say?" "No," he said, quiet and steady. We have our own mortgage, Danny's college. You did the right thing, I said, and meant it. A picture tried to form in my chest. Olivia asleep in a guest room not designed for babies, arguments muffled by closed doors. And I had to put the picture down before it burned. After we hung up, I called Judge Delgado, who had become my legal shadow, and increasingly, my reality check. I want an irrevocable trust for Olivia, I said. Education, health, legit emergencies, language preventing her parents from accessing the principal for any purpose. You as trustee. How much? Ruth asked. Her voice is a woodwind, calm, capable, with shape. 50,000 to start, I said, with instructions that it may be increased for her needs, never decreased to solve their convenience. Wise, she said, and generous. We spoke about mechanics, funding, investment policy, trigger conditions. We wrote in a sunset clause for the down payment of Olivia's first home if, when, she becomes the kind of adult who understands houses are not handbags. We drafted language stating that hardship does not include mismanaged lifestyle. Only then did I return Mark's call. Mom, he said, voice ragged and hopeful and angry, the braid of emotions that results when you are drowning, and the person on the boat is your mother. We need help, just enough to get into a rental, first and last, deposits, furniture, 30 grand. We'll pay you back. No, I said. I did not explain the principle. I did not soften the syllable. Sometimes mercy is a monosyllable. A trust fund, he sputtered when I told him. For what? That doesn't help now. It helps Olivia later, I said, which is the point. I will not subsidize the decisions that brought you here. So you'll live it up in Tokyo while we drown. I will live a life I earned, I said. You will learn to swim. This isn't over, he said. When you come back. If I come back, I said. The firm offered me something permanent. I like who I am here. What about us? What about Olivia? Olivia will have a future you cannot raid, I said. You will, I hope, become the kind of father who doesn't ask. We hung up. I cried then, not because I doubted, but because love and boundary share a wall, and sometimes you can hear the other side. That night I met Professor Sato for dinner at a place that believes noodles can repair the human story. I told him everything. In Arabic, he said after a while, eyes smiling, there is a saying I learned from a friend. For a tree to grow tall, its roots must go deep. You have found new soil, Marina. Old obligations are not roots, they are ropes. On my balcony, the city looked like a sky that had learned electricity. Messages arrived. From Sam, the trust is perfect. Dad would cheer. From Kenji, found a gallery opening you'll love. Friday? From Nora, Jakarta project needs you. Ready to extend? I opened the laptop and drafted 2 emails. Yes to Jakarta, and to Ruth, a note about adding a small scholarship clause in Olivia's name for a girl in Charleston who wants to study science, because generosity is a muscle best kept warm. Week 28 at the office began with green tea and a whiteboard. The integration had learned to breathe without supervision. Dr. Keller emailed to say a German engineer and a Japanese chemist had started a weekly breakfast to teach each other swear words and success metrics. Sato-san stopped me in the hall and thanked me by not thanking me, by taking me to the lab to show me the small victory they had been too careful to name before it survived the night. Nora called with Jakarta details, and a grin I could hear. Permanent, if you want it, she said. You have built a rhythm there we cannot buy. I stood at the glass and watched traffic write poems we don't know yet. The city had shifted from intimidating to informative. I could find strawberries in February and a cobbler at a market who fixed my suitcase zipper. while telling me a story about his grandfather's bicycle. I could cross Shibuya like a local and get lost in Yanaka like a tourist and feel correct both times. At home, I took the burgundy blouse from the wardrobe. I had brought it because it was a place to put a memory. I buttoned it because I am allowed to be sentimental in private. I thought of Peter in the garage, humming off key while sanding wood that did not ask to be smooth. I thought of the Charleston kitchen, the clock, the shirts. I thought of Mark and Alyssa learning the shape of consequence. I thought of Olivia asleep somewhere, and of a future in which she signs for textbooks without calculating shame. I wrote yes. On a free Saturday, Kenji took me through back streets to a bakery with no sign. "You have to know," he said. The custard buns were so serious we ate them without jokes. We walked to a temple that sits between two glass buildings like an elderly relative refusing to leave a family photo. Wishes hung on wooden plaques. I wrote one. I will not say what it was. I will say it had the shape of a door held open and the sound of a clock that keeps time without watching you. Anna hung 2 of my watercolors in a small corner of her gallery, a corner she calls people who said they don't paint. I stood in front of them and did not apologize. That is what painting did to me. Professor Sato and I invented a ritual. Coffee on Tuesdays, dinner on Fridays if neither of us invented work. We stayed careful because careful is not the opposite of brave. Careless is. We talked about the logistics of later without giving later the satisfaction of being a foregone conclusion. News came in small sideways ways. A photo Sam forwarded of Olivia in a thrift store sweater with cheeks pink from a cold Charleston wind. A text from Vivian, oddly gentle, saying, "They're learning." And then, because she cannot help herself, I told them people like us don't do rentals, followed by a second text that read, "I was wrong." Mark took a contracting job out of state for 3 months, traveling on Mondays and returning on Thursdays exhausted and, for the first time in years, quiet. Alyssa did a freelance project she would once have turned down because the publication did not pronounce its own prestige loudly enough. They sold the expensive car and learned the bus line that got you to the pediatrician quicker than traffic would pretend. In February, a photo arrived of Olivia with a first tooth and a grin like a rebellion. My heart did the thing hearts do, expanded and betrayed me by expanding further. I replied with a picture of a vending machine that sold hot soup in a can and wrote, "Some things are easier than we think." Alyssa sent back a string of heart emojis that looked like a language, and then, after a moment, "Thank you for the trust. It changed the air around us." Sometimes apologies arrive like that. Sideways, lowercase, true. Spring in Tokyo argues on your behalf. The cherry blossoms insist that endings and beginnings are not enemies. They are neighbors who share a fence. I walked one afternoon along the Meguro River with Anna, who wore a scarf that could be a plot twist, and we let the petals land on our shoulders without making metaphors at them. Kenji met us at a bridge, and Professor Sato appeared with paper cups of tea because kindness is logistics. "Do you miss Charleston?" Anna asked. "Yes," I said. "And no. I miss the person I was there when I was her. I don't miss the way other people wanted me to remain her." "You can be 2 truths," Sato said. We stood beneath a sky so emphatically soft it could teach even hard stories to yield. Before the fiscal year closed, I met with Ruth over video. She wore the kind of earrings that know how to listen. "Olivia's trust is performing," she said. "We'll rebalance in June. I've denied 2 requests from Mark that were disguised as inquiries. Alyssa has not asked. She sent a thank you card on paper that smelled faintly of peaches. I filed it with the documents because gratitude is a form of currency." "Thank you," I said. "You're welcome," she said. "And Marina, for the record, choosing your life is not abandoning anyone. It is instructing them." After the call, I opened the window. Somewhere below, a man practiced saxophone with determination. He was not yet good. The song, however, had already decided to forgive him. On an evening that decided to glow, I returned to the balcony with a cup of coffee that tasted like persistence. The city spread before me, a patient constellation mapped by engineers and chance. My phone buzzed with 3 messages. Sam sending a photo of a teenage Danny beside a college acceptance banner. Alyssa texting a picture of Olivia holding up a board book like a trophy. Nora asking if I preferred Jakarta's rainy season or dry. I set the phone face down and let the air move around me. Behind me, the kettle clicked in a language I now spoke. In front of me, a neon sign blinked a code only it understood. I thought of a kitchen in Charleston where a clock once dictated the terms, of a porch where a psychiatrist learned what a storm door can do, of a dinner table where lasagna attempted diplomacy, of a whiteboard where fear was written in a thick black marker and then surrounded by practical verbs, of a small fist grabbing a necklace and accidentally returning a woman to herself. I belong to me, I thought, and the city, generous, unoffended, agreed. And now it's your turn. If you were me, what would you have done? Tell me in the comments. And if this story struck a chord, like, subscribe, and watch the next one cued on your screen.